In this video, I'm going to cover an interesting way to model a stylized cartoonish rock of a simple sphere and using a displace deformer. So what I like to do is I like to compartmentalize, right? If I want to model a specific element, maybe I want to break out into a whole new project. And one of the cool things about Cinema 4D is you can have multiple projects open at the same time. If you notice, this little tab up here and this plus sign kind of looks similar to like your internet browser where you have multiple tabs. And this is exactly kind of how it works. So if I click on that plus sign, you can see we open a new tab. Instead of a new website, this is a new project. And you can go in, just click between these two tabs and again have multiple projects open at the same time. So I really like to break out into different projects and model some different elements, and then I can copy and paste those elements into the original project super easily. So it's super cool, multiple projects open at once. So let's go ahead and let's create our stylized rocks. So to do that, we're gonna go and we're just gonna grab a sphere and we're gonna go and bring up the segments because we're going to be deforming this, so we know we need a little bit more segments here. And if I hit N and then B to get my garage shading with lines, you can see the segments there. And I'm also going to go ahead and use that hexahedron type of sphere again, and then I'll hit N and then A to get back to my garage shading with outlines. And then what we're going to do is in the deformers menu, where we've been spending a lot of time lately, we are going to go and we are going to add a displacer deformer, which is right here. And remember to add this as a child of the selected object. We're going to hold the shift key down and there we go. So I'm going to immediately go and just up the height here and then go over to the shading tab and load up a noise. Now right away, this doesn't look much like a rock, but what we can do is go into the noise properties here and adjust some of these settings here. So there's all different types of noises that we can use, and they all have very interesting names. Some are very hard to pronounce, but if you want to visualize what these actually look like, there's this little hidden tab right here, this little down arrow. If I click on that, you can see all of the different noises and a little visual preview of what they look like. So this makes a little bit more sense as to like, okay, what are these different noises? What do they all do? They're all trying to replicate some kind of thing that happens and occurs in real life. So the noise that I found is really good for this kind of stylized rock look is Voronoi 1, not 2, Voronoi 1. It's very specific, but if I go and I choose Voronoi 1, you can see still doesn't look like a rock. This looks more like a sea urchin or something, and those are not good for crabs, so we're not gonna bring this into that crabby environment. But one thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna really crank up the scale here. And the higher I bring this up, the more you can kind of see like, okay, this looks like a stylized rock, albeit with a couple belly buttons, which, you know, these dimples really don't look all that interesting, but we can kind of tease those out by adjusting the relative scale here. And this is the scale on the X, the Y, and the Z. And so we can kind of tease out some of those little dimples there. And of course, you know, if something looks odd on the one side, we can just, you know, cover it up. It's kind of like if you broke a vase on one side, you just, you know, angle it towards the wall so no one can see the issue. So again, we can adjust these scale settings. Another thing we can do to quickly iterate off this is adjusting the random seed that is generating the noise. And so sometimes if I just kind of go through here, kind of see like, all right, some are better than others. Some have more prominent dimples than others, but like right here, actually this looks pretty dang good. Again, maybe from this angle, so maybe we'll just, you know, angle it from here when we place it in our fishbowl scene, but this is looking pretty good. Now, one of the cool things we can do is we can actually command, click, and drag to duplicate that displacer, and we can adjust the height here. And then another thing we can do, go into the noise and adjust the random seed here as well, and we get a little bit more kind of cool details here. We can adjust the scale. And so this is just, you know, we're layering multiple noises on top of each other, which is really cool, and just adding a little bit more of that stylized type of look here. So maybe something like that is looking pretty good. We'll play around with the seed. You can also go back to the actual height. And instead of actually going and clicking on these individual objects, if I'm adjusting something in the noise like so, if I want to go back to that menu in the displacer that has the scale, I can just hit this back button and that will bring me back a level on this object. So if I click into the noise, I'm in the noise shader options. If I go back, I'm back up one level, and I'm back to my displacer options here, and I can go to object and adjust things like so. Now this is looking pretty good. So again, before and after, we're just adding a little bit more of those little corners and dents in there, really making this look kind of interesting. Again, maybe not so much on the backside there, but again, that's fine because we can just angle things so you don't see that side. So if I hit N and then B, you're going to see that this is a pretty dense mesh. And if I up this even more to get even more of that detail, this is really overkill. And especially if the rock is going to be like this small in our scene, you never want a mesh so dense with segments that it's completely black in your scene. So whenever you're modeling something, you need to be kind of cognizant whether you're going to be really close up on that object and you need all this extra detail, or if the object's going to be small and far away from your camera view so you can get away with less segments, okay? So one of the things we can do is we can bring down the segments here, but we're losing all that detail, right? So we don't want to do that. But what we can do is another thing where we can actually remove segments and create a new mesh that is optimized and still maintains that amount of detail. And how we're going to do this is using something called a remesher. And so to find the remesher, you're going to find it in the generators menu here. There it is. And we're going to hold the Alt or Option key down to make that a parent of the selected object, which was our sphere. And you're going to see right down here in the lower left corner that the remesh process is occurring. And you can kind of see what is happening right now. Now, you didn't see any polygons being removed or changing the density because the mesh density by default is set to 100%. So basically what this is doing is it's using the very popular, very powerful Z remesher from the Maxon sculpting app ZBrush, and it's bringing that 3D sculpting Z remesher power to Cinema 4D. And so what we can do is actually, instead of keeping the same mesh density, albeit having a nice polygon flow here, it's nice evenly subdivided, we can actually bring this down to say like 10% of the original mesh density. And so you can see exactly what's going on there. Now we are losing some details where those kind of sharper edges are, and that's where this adaptiveness really comes in handy. So what adaptiveness does if there's more details like these edges, these sharper edges on a mesh, if you bring this adaptiveness amount up a little bit, say, 88%, you're going to see that what's going to happen is they're going to have more subdivisions near those higher detailed areas to try to maintain those higher details or sharper detailed areas. Now, if I brought this adaptiveness all the way down to 0, what it's going to do is just try to place evenly sized polygons all across our mesh, and it's not going to try to add more subdivisions where the details are, okay? So this is not really the best solution for us. So we're gonna, again, move this back up to 90%. And I think I'm liking the amount of detail that we have here. And now if you had a symmetrical object in any way, you could turn on these options here to make the calculation even faster, because instead of having to remesh both sides, it will just remesh one side and then symmetrically mirror that on whatever axis you have here. And you could also have splines that direct the flow of these polygons if you want to do that as well, which is a little bit more advanced. But let's see how low we can go and bring the mesh density down to 5%. And I think that's looking pretty good. Let's just make sure by hitting N and then A, and you can see that, yeah, this looks good from far away, and we can still see all those really nice details from the edges. So what we can do is, instead of having this setup, which is, again, live, it's always calculating, we can actually bake this down into a mesh. And essentially, what we can do is have this remesher be like a rock generator, okay? So what we can do is we still want to maintain this whole setup, but we want to take this current state of this object and just bake it down into a piece of geometry without deleting what we currently have here. So to do that, we're going to go right down here to this menu and click and hold, and we're going to select current state to object. And what that does is when I let go, you can see I have this remesh object, and if I have my move tool and I move this out of the way, you can see, okay, this is my baked down piece of geometry. It's not being generated by anything. It's just a live editable piece of geometry. And we can go back to this remesh and we can actually turn this off. And what we're going to do is we're just going to go into each of these displacers, go into the noises, and we're just going to adjust it. Maybe just by simply adjusting the seed of all these different noises, and we just want to get it to a place where it looks different enough from our other rock here. So we'll go to this displacer here, go into the noise, adjust the random seed here as well. Now I'd say that's looking different enough and no really noticeable dimples. So we have a little bit of a different type of rock here. So what we can do again is turn back on the remesh. And I'd say that's looking pretty good. And we will go and we'll bake this one out as well. So we'll go current state to object, or if you wanted to, you could right click and go to current state to object as well. And we'll just rename this rock 1 and rock 2. And let's do one more for posterity's sake. And we'll turn off the remesh. We'll go and let's change these different seeds. Whoops, I accidentally moved the wrong rock there, but that's okay. And maybe let's go to this seed as well. How's that looking? It's looking a little bit janky right here, so let's maybe adjust the size here. Maybe we need to adjust the size on the first displacer. Another thing to mess with as well is the order in which these displacers are kind of activating, because remember, everything in Cinema 4D activates from top to bottom like effects in After Effects. So if we adjust which order of operation, which displacer is displacing first, we can get a different result, as you can see there. So I actually like it where the displacer 1 is happening first. And so we'll go and say, okay, let's turn back on the remesh and let's book it and let's bake it. Let's freeze that action, and this will be rock 3. And so we can go and we can just save out this project file as our rock generator. So save as, and just rename this rock generator. So we can always have this Cinema 4D file to come back in and generate even more rocks if we need to in the future, because we have this original setup in here and ready to go. So here are my 3 rocks. I'll go and click and drag and get all those and hit Command and Control C to copy. Go into my original file and then Command and Control V to paste. And here are my 3 rocks. And I can go and we'll place these later, but you can see how cool this is to be able to go and do something in a completely different project file, copy it and paste it into another project file. So this is really cool. Again, I really love compartmentalizing out and doing all these different details, modeling different details in separate projects, creating little generators for different types of models, and be able to jump back and forth between those projects super easily. So never doubt the flexibility of many of the tools inside of Cinema 4D, especially when you start stacking deformers and generators together. Part of the fun of Cinema 4D is how it allows for experimentations. You just throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and see what sticks. All right, see you in the next video.